My name is Yetta, and I'm 42 years old. For 17 years, I've worked tirelessly as a single mother to give my daughter Mackenzie everything she could want. Her father Frank walked out when she was only 2, leaving us with nothing. Despite all my sacrifices last week, I discovered Mackenzie's viral TikTok rating me as a 110 parent while giving her stepdad a perfect score. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife could. I left a thumbs-up comment. Then, I took action. Before I continue this story, where are you watching from today? Hit subscribe and leave a comment below, letting me know if you've ever had to teach someone a difficult lesson about gratitude. I grew up in a modest, middle-class family in Grand Rapids, Michigan. My parents weren't wealthy, but they taught me the value of hard work and integrity. We lived in a small 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other. My father worked as an accountant while my mother taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. They made enough for us to live comfortably, but luxury items were rare treats rather than everyday expectations. When I turned 18, I received a partial scholarship to Michigan State University. My parents helped as much as they could, but I still needed student loans and a part-time job at the campus bookstore to make ends meet. I was studying business administration, dreaming of someday running my own company. That's where I met Frank during my sophomore year. He was charismatic, ambitious, and incredibly charming. Frank studied finance and talked about becoming an investment banker in New York. He had this way of making everyone around him feel special, like they were part of something exciting. When he focused those bright blue eyes on me, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. Our romance moved quickly. Too quickly looking back now. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. By the end of my junior year, he proposed with a ring that I later learned he'd purchased on credit. I said yes without hesitation. We got married in a small ceremony the summer before our senior year. My parents were concerned about the rush, but supported my decision because they saw how happy I was. After graduation, we moved to Chicago, where Frank had landed an entry-level position at a financial firm. I found work as an administrative assistant at a marketing company. We rented a small apartment and talked about building our future together. Everything seemed perfect. When I discovered I was pregnant with Mackenzie just a year into our marriage, Frank seemed thrilled. He painted the spare bedroom pale yellow and assembled the crib himself. The day Mackenzie was born was genuinely the happiest day of my life. Frank cried when he held her for the first time, and I thought our little family was complete. The changes were subtle at first. Frank started coming home later from work. He missed Mackenzie's first smile, her first rollover, her first tentative crawl across our living room floor. His excuse was always work, but the promotion he kept talking about never materialized. What I didn't know then was that Frank wasn't working late. He was at underground poker games. The gambling addiction had started in college with friendly poker nights, but it had grown into something uncontrollable. He hid it well for years, even from me. By the time Mackenzie turned 2, our savings account had mysteriously dwindled. Bills were suddenly difficult to pay. Frank became irritable, distant, picking fights over small things. When I questioned our finances, he accused me of not trusting him. I was working full-time while also caring for a toddler, exhausted and confused about what was happening to my marriage. Then came the night that changed everything. I woke up at 3 a.m. to find Frank packing a bag. When confronted, he broke down and confessed everything. He had gambled away not just our savings, but had taken out loans with dangerous people. He claimed he needed to disappear for a while to figure things out and protect us. Before I could process what was happening, he kissed Mackenzie's forehead as she slept, handed me their wedding ring, and walked out the door. The next morning, I discovered our joint bank account emptied. The rent was overdue. Mackenzie needed new shoes, and I had exactly $43.16 to my name. The following weeks were a blur of panic and desperation. I called Frank's parents, who were as shocked as I was, but offered little help beyond sympathy. I moved out of our apartment before being evicted and found a tiny one-bedroom place in a less desirable neighborhood. I picked up evening shifts at a local restaurant while a neighbor watched Mackenzie. On weekends, I cleaned houses for cash. Every night, I would collapse into bed after putting Mackenzie to sleep, too exhausted to even cry. But I had no choice except to keep going. There was this beautiful little girl who depended entirely on me. Somehow, we survived that first year. I eventually found a better-paying job as an office manager for a construction company. My boss was understanding about my situation and allowed me flexibility for Mackenzie's doctor appointments and daycare emergencies. I enrolled in night classes to improve my qualifications, studying after Mackenzie was asleep. Those early years were so hard. While other mothers were enjoying playdates and mommy and me classes, I was juggling work schedules and budget spreadsheets. I missed Mackenzie's first day of preschool because I couldn't afford to take time off. The guilt of those missed moments still haunts me. As Mackenzie grew, I made sure she never felt our financial struggles. I became an expert at finding free community activities, making holidays special on a shoestring budget, and stretching $1 until it screamed. At garage sales, I'd find nearly new toys and books. At thrift stores, I'd discover brand-name children's clothes with tags still attached. Mackenzie never knew the difference. When she was 7, I received my first significant promotion. The extra income allowed us to move to a safer 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood with better schools. For the first time, I started a small savings account specifically for Mackenzie's future college expenses. Just $25 a week at first, but it was a start. Those middle years were actually sweet. Mackenzie was a bright, curious child who loved reading and art. We had our Sunday traditions, pancakes for breakfast, then the library followed by the park, if weather permitted. She'd help me coupon clip at the kitchen table, turning it into a game. She understood money was tight, but she never complained. As her 10th birthday approached, I splurged on a small birthday party at the local pizza place with 5 of her friends. I remember watching her blow out the candles, her face glowing with happiness, thinking we had finally made it through the worst. Little did I know that the challenges of raising a teenager would make those early struggles seem almost simple by comparison. By the time Mackenzie entered middle school, I had worked my way up to operations director. The job came with better pay and benefits, allowing me to finally breathe a bit financially. I started putting more into her college fund, determined that she would have opportunities I never had. But as Mackenzie approached her teen years, I noticed changes. She became more aware of what other kids had that she didn't: the latest phones, designer clothes, vacations to exotic places. The gratitude and understanding she'd shown as a younger child began to fade, replaced by comparisons and complaints. I tried explaining our journey, how far we'd come, but to a 13-year-old, history is irrelevant. All that mattered was the present and what her friends possessed that she didn't. Still, I wanted to give her everything I could. When she needed a computer for school, I worked overtime for 3 months to buy a good one. When she wanted to attend a science camp that cost nearly $1,000, I sold my grandmother's antique brooch to make it happen. I never told her these details, not wanting to burden her with guilt or obligation. Perhaps that was my mistake. Looking back now, I realize I was trying to compensate for Frank's absence with material things, trying to be both mother and father, provider and nurturer. In trying to give her everything, maybe I failed to give her the one thing she needed most: an understanding of true value, both of money and of people who genuinely care. 10 years after Frank disappeared, just as Mackenzie was turning 12, I received an unexpected email. The subject line read simply, "I'd like to see Mackenzie." It was from Frank. My first instinct was anger. How dare he reappear now after a decade of silence? No child support, no birthday cards, not even a phone call to check if his daughter was alive and well. I almost deleted the email without responding. But curiosity got the better of me. I clicked open the message to find a brief note explaining that he had gotten help for his gambling addiction, had been sober for 8 years, and had rebuilt his life. He included his phone number and asked if we could talk about him possibly reconnecting with Mackenzie. After a sleepless night, considering all angles, I called him. The voice on the other end was familiar, yet different, more mature perhaps. Frank explained that after leaving Chicago, he'd hit rock bottom in Las Vegas, gambling away even the small amount he'd taken from our account. After a particularly bad night, he ended up sleeping on the streets for weeks before finding a Gamblers Anonymous meeting that changed his trajectory. He claimed to have worked odd jobs for years while getting his life back on track. Eventually, he used his finance background to start a small investment consulting business that had grown surprisingly successful. He had remarried 5 years ago to Diane, a real estate agent, and they had 2 children together, ages 4 and 2. I listened skeptically. It all sounded too perfect, too neat. The reformed addict who turns his life around and creates a picture-perfect new family. What about the mess he'd left behind? What about the years Mackenzie had cried for a father who never showed up? "Why now?" I asked. "Why, after 10 years?" Frank hesitated before answering. "Guilt, mainly. Therapy made me face what I'd done, and my kids. Having them made me realize what I'd thrown away with Mackenzie." I told him I would think about it, but made no promises. That night, I asked Mackenzie if she would be interested in meeting her father. Her reaction surprised me. "Why should I? He didn't want to meet me for 10 years, she said with a shrug that couldn't quite hide her hurt. Despite her apparent indifference, I saw something in her eyes that made me think she needed this, if only for closure. So, I agreed to a supervised meeting at a neutral location, a cafe near our apartment. That first meeting was awkward and tense. Frank brought a photo album showing his journey over the years, along with an expensive bracelet for Mackenzie that she accepted without enthusiasm. Mackenzie barely spoke, answering his questions with one-word responses. When Frank tried to explain his absence, she cut him off. "You don't need to explain," she said coolly. "Mom already told me you had problems and couldn't handle being a father." Frank looked at me with surprise, perhaps expecting I had vilified him over the years. The truth was, I had always been careful to speak neutrally about Frank, telling Mackenzie he had issues he needed to work through, and that his leaving wasn't her fault. I never wanted her to carry the burden of parental resentment. After that initial meeting, Frank requested regular visits. Against my better judgment, I agreed, thinking it might be good for Mackenzie to have her father in her life, however belatedly. Soon, I learned more about Frank's new life. His business was indeed successful, allowing him and Diane to purchase a sprawling home in an exclusive suburb. Their Instagram-perfect family frequently vacationed in exotic locations. Their children attended private schools and had every advantage money could buy. As visits continued, Frank began inviting Mackenzie to his home. The first time she returned from a weekend there, she was uncharacteristically quiet. "How was it?" I asked. "Their house is huge," she replied. "I have my own room there with a queen bed and a TV." Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. It wasn't just observation, but comparison. In our modest apartment, Mackenzie had a twin bed and shared the living room TV with me. Over the next few months, Frank's influence grew. He took Mackenzie shopping for clothes I couldn't afford, to restaurants where the appetizers cost more than our entire dinner budget, to concerts and events that had always been beyond our reach. Diane, his new wife, complicated matters further. She was the epitome of polished sophistication, always perfectly styled, and unfailingly nice, in that way that feels calculated rather than genuine. She took Mackenzie for manicures and shopping trips, showing her a world of feminine luxury I had never been able to provide. What bothered me most was Frank's inconsistency. He would make grand plans with Mackenzie, then cancel at the last minute due to business emergencies. He would promise to attend her school events, then send Diane in his place. He was fun. Dad vacation, dad gift giving, dad but never homework helping dad, sick day dad, or discipline dad. And through it all, not once did he offer financial support for Mackenzie's daily needs or future. The college fund I had sacrificed to build remained my sole responsibility. While he bought her designer clothes, I paid for her school supplies, medical insurance, and the thousands of invisible expenses that come with raising a child. I struggled with mixed emotions. On one hand, I was glad Mackenzie had a relationship with her father and enjoyed the experiences he could provide. On the other hand, I resented how easily he had stepped back into her life bearing gifts and fun rather than responsibility, while I continued to carry the daily weight of parenthood alone. What worried me most was how Frank and Diane portrayed their life on social media. Their feeds were curated showcases of family perfection, matching outfits at theme parks, gourmet meals at their massive dining table, their spotless children always smiling. Increasingly, Mackenzie appeared in these posts awkwardly inserted into their family narrative, as if she had always been there. I noticed Mackenzie studying these images, sometimes scrolling through their profiles with an expression I couldn't quite read. Was it longing envy? A sense of being an outsider looking in? Whatever it was, it bothered me deeply. "They're just pictures, Mackenzie," I said once. "Social media isn't real life." "I know, Mom," she replied without looking up from her phone. "But their fake life still looks better than our real one." The comment stung, but I swallowed my hurt. Teenagers say hurtful things without thinking. But as time passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that Frank was offering Mackenzie a glossy, alternate reality that made our authentic but imperfect life together seem inadequate by comparison. What Frank never posted about was how he had abandoned his first family, how he had missed a decade of his daughter's life, or how he continued to evade financial responsibility for her upbringing. In his carefully edited narrative, those chapters simply didn't exist. As Mackenzie entered high school, the changes in her attitude became impossible to ignore. The thoughtful, appreciative girl I had raised was transforming into someone I barely recognized, someone who measured value in brand names and social media validation. Her 16th birthday marked a turning point. I had saved for months to buy her a used Toyota, a sensible car that was safe and reliable. I'd even managed to find one in her favorite color, blue. The morning of her birthday, I led her outside, with eyes closed to reveal her gift. Her reaction was lukewarm at best. "Thanks, Mom," she said, giving the car a quick inspection. "It's nice." That weekend, Frank hosted an extravagant Sweet 16 party at his mansion. 50 guests, professional decorations, a hired DJ, and catering that cost more than 3 months of my mortgage payments. When Mackenzie returned home, she couldn't stop talking about the party and the amazing gifts Frank and Diane had given her: a designer handbag, the latest iPhone, and expensive jewelry. My modest car gift wasn't mentioned again. After that, Mackenzie's entitlement grew exponentially. Suddenly, our apartment was too small. The clothes I bought were too basic. Our furniture was outdated. Every comparison was implicitly measured against Frank and Diane's lifestyle. "Why can't we ever eat at good restaurants?" she asked one night as I served the pasta dinner I'd prepared. "What do you mean, we go out sometimes?" I responded, thinking of our monthly dinner treats to the local Italian place. She rolled her eyes. "I mean real restaurants, like the ones Dad takes me to." Dad. The word hung in the air between us. When had Frank transformed from the absent father to Dad in her vocabulary? And when had I become the inadequate parent Mackenzie's social media obsession grew alongside her materialism? She became fixated on growing her following, spending hours, perfecting posts, and checking for likes and comments. Her new friends were mainly from Frank's wealthy neighborhood kids who had never worked a day in their lives but carried purses that cost more than my monthly salary. Our arguments about money became weekly occurrences. "Everyone has these boots, Mom. They're only $200. $200 is our grocery budget for 2 weeks, Mackenzie." "God, you're so cheap. Dad would buy them for me." "Then ask Dad," I would reply, trying to mask my hurt. But Frank only funded the fun extras, never the necessities, and Mackenzie seemed unable to understand the difference. Her grades began to slip. The straight-A student who once talked about becoming a doctor or engineer now barely maintained a B average. When I expressed concern, she dismissed it. "Grades don't really matter. Look at Dad. He makes tons of money and he says college is overrated. Most successful people are entrepreneurs now." This from the man who had a business degree that I had helped him complete when we were married. Diane's influence was equally troubling. Through her, Mackenzie was learning that a woman's value lay in her appearance and ability to attract attention. Hours were spent on makeup tutorials and outfit planning. Conversations revolved around social status and materialistic achievements rather than character or accomplishments. One evening, I overheard Mackenzie on the phone with a friend. "No, I'm at my mom's place tonight," she said with a sigh, as if being with me was an obligation to endure rather than home. "Going to Dad's tomorrow, though." My heart cracked a little. When had my role diminished from mom to my mom, in contrast to some other preferred existence? The college fund I had sacrificed for years to build now stood at nearly $90,000. It represented countless overtime hours, skipped vacations, and delayed car replacements. It was the physical manifestation of my commitment to Mackenzie's future. When I mentioned it during one of our arguments about spending, hoping to reinforce the value of saving for the future, Mackenzie was unimpressed. "Dad says he'll pay for whatever college I want to attend anyway," she said with a shrug. "He knows people at all the good schools." It was becoming clear that Frank was making promises behind my back, positioning himself as the generous, affluent parent, while I was cast as the penny-pinching obstacle. The irony was bitter. The man who had contributed nothing to Mackenzie's upbringing was now taking credit for her future, while my years of sacrifice were dismissed as inadequate. Even more painful were Mackenzie's casual comparisons about our living situations. "Dad's kitchen is being remodeled again. They're putting in one of those huge islands with the waterfall marble edges. Our kitchen looks so outdated compared to theirs." Our kitchen, their kitchen, us versus them. The divisions grew sharper with me, increasingly on the losing side of every comparison. I tried talking to her about values beyond material possessions, about character integrity, the importance of working for what you have. But these conversations were met with eye rolls and dismissive comments about me being out of touch with how the world worked now. I was losing my daughter to a version of reality I couldn't compete with. And the worst part, Frank wasn't even trying that hard. He was simply leveraging his wealth to buy the affection he had never earned through years of actual parenting. One night, after Mackenzie had gone to bed following another argument about money, I sat alone in our living room, looking at old photographs. There she was at 5, missing her front teeth, proudly holding up a drawing she'd made for me. There at 8, helping me bake cookies in our tiny kitchen, flour smudged on her nose. There at 12, receiving an academic achievement award, beaming with pride as I stood beside her. What had happened to that girl? And what had I done wrong? That material things had become more important than the bond we had built through years of it being just the two of us against the world. I wondered if all parents of teenagers felt this way, or if my situation was uniquely painful because of Frank's reappearance. There was no manual for navigating co-parenting with an ex who had abandoned his responsibilities for a decade before returning as the fun parent with resources I could never match. What I didn't realize then was that things were about to get much worse. The TikTok video that would shatter my heart was already being planned, filmed, and edited, ready to expose just how successful Frank had been in turning Mackenzie against me. It was a Friday evening when I discovered the video. After a particularly grueling work week, finalizing quarterly reports, I had ordered takeout and was looking forward to a quiet night scrolling through social media before Mackenzie returned from her study group. At least that's what she had told me she was doing. I later learned she was actually at Frank's house filming content for her social media accounts. I don't usually check TikTok, but that night, something prompted me to download the app and search for Mackenzie's account. She had been protective of her content lately, changing the subject whenever I asked about her posts. Now I understood why. The video was pinned to the top of her profile. The thumbnail showed a split screen on one side, a selfie of Mackenzie with Frank and Diane in their lavish living room. On the other side, Mackenzie alone in our apartment, expression deliberately glum. The title read, "Rating My Parents' Stepdad 10-10, Biodad 110. With shaking hands, I pressed play. The video began with upbeat music as Mackenzie appeared on screen in what I recognized as her bedroom at Frank's house, decorated in expensive furnishings that made it look like a luxury hotel suite. "Time to rate my parents," her voiceover announced cheerfully. "Let's start with my stepmom, Diane." Photos flashed across the screen, Diane and Mackenzie shopping, getting manicures, posing by a pool. "Stepmom 910, always makes time for me and knows all the best places to shop and never says no to a spa day, only losing a point because she sometimes tries too hard with my friends." Next came Frank. "Dad 10-10. Successful, fun, always taking me to amazing places." Images of Frank and Mackenzie at concerts, sporting events, and restaurants filled the screen. "Gives the best advice about life and never makes me feel bad about wanting nice things." Then came my section. The music changed to something somber. The lighting seemed deliberately unflattering as Mackenzie stood in our kitchen. "Mom 110. Always working, constantly complaining about money, lives in the past, and doesn't understand anything about social media or what's important nowadays." The camera panned around our apartment, focusing on areas that appeared particularly modest compared to Frank's mansion. "Boring neighborhood, no pool, and she expects me to be grateful for everything, even though other parents provide way more for their kids without the guilt trip." The final frame showed Mackenzie looking seriously into the camera. "Some men don't deserve to be fathers, but some men deserve better daughters too." I sat frozen, phone in hand, as tears blurred my vision. The video had over 30,000 views. The comments section was filled with sympathetic responses. "Girl, I feel you. My mom is the same way. Rich dad for the win. Your stepmom seems amazing." But what hurt most were the comments from Frank and Diane. Frank, "Always proud of my girl for speaking her truth." Diane, "We're always here for you, sweetheart. Our home is your home." They had seen the video. They had approved of it. Perhaps they had even encouraged it. The betrayal felt physical, like a blow to my chest that left me struggling to breathe. 17 years of sacrifice, of putting Mackenzie's needs before my own, of working myself to exhaustion to provide for her, reduced to a 110 rating and public mockery. I noticed the video had been posted 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks during which Mackenzie had come home, eaten the meals I prepared, accepted the clothes I bought, slept in the home I maintained, all while this video circulated online for thousands to see. The deliberate deception made the betrayal even more painful. Without thinking, I clicked the thumbs up button beneath the video and set my phone down. Then I went to the bathroom, turned on the shower to mask the sound, and sobbed until no more tears would come. When I finally emerged, red-eyed but calm, a strange clarity had replaced my initial pain. I had spent 17 years trying to be both mother and father to Mackenzie. I had protected her from the harsh realities of our situation, never telling her how many nights I'd gone to bed hungry so she could have a proper dinner, or how I'd pawned my grandmother's jewelry to pay for her middle school band trip. I had shielded her from the truth about Frank, never revealing the full extent of his abandonment or how he had stolen our savings before disappearing. I had encouraged their relationship when he returned, swallowing my resentment because I believed having her father in her life was important, and this was my reward. Public humiliation and the knowledge that my daughter valued luxury and social media approval more than the years of love and sacrifice that had sustained her. Something broke in me that night. Not just my heart, but the illusion that I could somehow compete with Frank's wealth, or that material provisions were an adequate measure of parental love. If that was how Mackenzie wanted to keep score, then perhaps it was time she learned what life was like without my contribution to the tally. As I lay awake that night, a plan began to form. It wasn't about revenge, though many might see it that way. It was about consequences and valuable life lessons that Frank's money had been sheltering Mackenzie from learning. Sometimes love means allowing the people we care about to experience the natural outcomes of their choices. And Mackenzie had made hers very clear. I didn't sleep that night. As darkness gave way to dawn, my mind kept replaying the video alongside memories of our life together. Mackenzie's first steps, her first day of school, the countless nights I had held her through fevers and nightmares. How had we arrived at this point where all that history meant nothing compared to Frank's material offerings? By morning, my hurt had crystallized into resolve. If Mackenzie truly believed Frank was the superior parent, perhaps it was time she experienced life without my support, which she had so publicly devalued. First, I called my financial advisor as soon as their office opened. "I need to discuss Mackenzie's college fund," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Of course, Ms. Walker. The 529 plan is doing well. It's currently at $87,412. The number hit me hard. $87,000 represented 17 years of sacrifice. Birthdays when I'd received no gifts because every spare dollar went to that account. Winters in a coat that should have been replaced years earlier. Dental work I had postponed. Vacations never taken. All to ensure Mackenzie would have opportunities I never had. "What are my options for withdrawing those funds?" I asked. My advisor hesitated. "Well, since you're the account owner, you have full control. You can withdraw funds at any time, though there are tax implications and penalties for non-qualified educational expenses." "And what about qualified expenses? I'm taking some professional certification courses. Would those count?" "Potentially, yes. But I have to ask, are you sure about this?" "This account was established specifically for Mackenzie's education." "I'm aware of its original purpose," I replied. "But circumstances have changed." After ending the call with detailed instructions for liquidating the account, I contacted the dealership that had financed Mackenzie's car. The vehicle was in my name since she was a minor when I purchased it. "I need to discuss repossession options," I explained to the stunned customer service representative. "Is there a problem with the payments, Ms. Walker? Your account shows you're current." "The payments aren't the issue. The car is no longer needed." Next came the most difficult call to my lawyer. I needed to understand my legal obligations to Mackenzie, who would turn 18 in just over a year. "At 17, you're still legally responsible for providing necessities: food, shelter, clothing, education," my lawyer explained. "But there's no legal obligation to provide a vehicle, a college fund, or other extras." "And what about her father? Could he be compelled to contribute now after all these years?" "Potentially, though it would mean going back to court proving his paternity and fighting what would likely be a lengthy legal battle. Given her age by the time anything was resolved, she might already be 18, at which point child support obligations typically end." Finally, I called local apartment complexes inquiring about rental requirements for young adults. Most required a co-signer for anyone under 21 or without established credit. I made note of which ones might be willing to work with a first-time renter if they had sufficient income or savings. With my research complete, I spent the afternoon creating a detailed spreadsheet documenting every major expense I had covered for Mackenzie over the past 17 years. Health insurance, school supplies, clothing, food, shelter, extracurricular activities. The total was staggering, especially considering I had done it all alone without a penny of support from Frank. I visited my bank and transferred the college fund into a separate personal account. The bank manager raised an eyebrow but processed the transaction without comment. Then I called Frank. It went to voicemail as I expected. He rarely answered calls from me. "Frank, it's Yetta. I'm making some changes regarding Mackenzie that you should be aware of. Call me back when you can." My tone was neutral businesslike. He returned my call surprisingly quickly. "What's going on?" he asked, sounding mildly annoyed at the interruption. "I've seen Mackenzie's TikTok video comparing us as parents," I said directly. A pause. "Oh, that. Kids say all kinds of things online these days. You shouldn't take it personally." "I've taken it very seriously, actually, since Mackenzie clearly feels you're the more capable parent. I'm stepping back to allow you to assume more responsibility." "What does that mean exactly?" His voice had an edge now. "It means I'm repossessing her car, which is in my name, and I've liquidated her college fund, which I alone contributed to for the past 17 years. I thought you should know in case she comes to you for alternatives." "You can't do that. That money was for her education." His outrage was rich coming from someone who had contributed nothing. "Actually, I can. The account was in my name, established with my earnings. If you're concerned about her education, perhaps this is an opportunity for you to step up after 17 years of financial absence." "This is ridiculous, Yetta. You're punishing Mackenzie because your feelings got hurt over some stupid social media post." "I'm not punishing anyone, Frank. I'm allowing natural consequences to occur. Mackenzie has made it clear she values your parenting approach over mine. Now she can experience it fully." "So, what, she's supposed to just walk everywhere? How will she get to school? There's public transportation, or perhaps you can buy her another car, since material provisions seem to be the love language she appreciates most. And what about college? Are you seriously throwing away her future over this?" "Her future isn't thrown away, Frank. It's simply no longer my financial responsibility alone. You've had no problem taking credit for being her father. Now you can share in the actual obligations that come with the role." He sputtered something about me being vindictive and unreasonable before hanging up. I had expected nothing less. That afternoon, I arranged for the car to be repossessed while Mackenzie was at school. I left a detailed letter on her bed, explaining my decisions along with the documentation of expenses I had covered throughout her life and information on apartments she might be able to afford on her own. The letter wasn't angry or accusatory. It simply outlined 3 choices. 1. She could apologize sincerely, take down the video, and work to rebuild trust with the understanding that privileges would need to be re-earned. 2. She could move in with Frank and Diane since she clearly preferred their household and parenting style. 3. She could use her social media earnings to rent her own apartment and experience true independence. Whatever she chose, I emphasized that I would always love her, but that love didn't mean sheltering her from the consequences of her actions, or continuing to provide financially for someone who publicly devalued those provisions. Then I sat in the living room and waited for her return from school, prepared for the storm that would follow. Mackenzie arrived home at her usual time, dropped her backpack by the door, and headed toward the kitchen without acknowledging me. I watched her through the doorway as she opened the refrigerator, grabbed a yogurt, and leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. She was the picture of teenage nonchalance, completely unaware that her world was about to shift dramatically. After a few minutes, she frowned and looked up from her screen. "Where's my car?" I took a deep breath. "We need to talk, Mackenzie." Something in my tone must have signaled the seriousness of the situation, because she set down her phone, an unusual action for her these days. What's going on? And seriously, where's my car? It wasn't in the parking lot. The car has been repossessed, I said calmly. There's a letter on your bed explaining everything, but I think we should discuss this face to face. Her expression cycled rapidly through confusion, shock, and anger. What do you mean, repossessed? We're not behind on payments. The car was in my name, Mackenzie. I decided to return it. You decided without even talking to me? How am I supposed to get around now? I gestured toward the living room. Let's sit down. She followed me reluctantly, arms crossed defensively across her chest. As we sat on opposite ends of the sofa, I pulled out my phone and opened her TikTok video. Would you like to explain this? I asked, turning the screen toward her. Her eyes widened slightly before her expression shuddered. You were spying on my social media. Is it spying to watch a public video with 30,000 views, a video in which you rate me as a 110 parent while praising your father who abandoned you for 10 years? She had the grace to look uncomfortable, but quickly recovered. It was just a joke, Mom. Everyone does these rating videos. It's not a big deal. It seemed quite serious to me, especially the part where you called me boring, cheap, and stuck in the past. Or the comments about how I live in a bad neighborhood and can't provide what other parents do. You're overreacting, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. It's just content. It doesn't mean anything. Content that hurt me deeply after 17 years of being your only consistent parent, I replied. Content that Frank and Diane supported and encouraged. Content that you deliberately hid from me for 3 weeks while continuing to accept everything I provide. She stared at her hands, silent. I've made some decisions based on your very public assessment of my parenting. Since you find Frank's approach superior, I'm stepping back to let you experience it fully. What does that mean? Wariness had crept into her voice. It means several things. First, as you've noticed, the car is gone. Second, I've liquidated your college fund. That got her attention. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with genuine shock. You what? The $87,000 I saved for your education over the past 17 years has been transferred to my personal account. You can't do that, she practically shouted. That's my money. Actually, it was my money in an account under my name that I intended to use for your education. But given your clear preference for Frank's parenting and resources, it seems appropriate that he should provide for your future education. Tears welled in her eyes, whether from anger or fear, I couldn't tell. This is insane. You're punishing me over a stupid video? I'm not punishing you, Mackenzie. I'm allowing you to experience the natural consequences of your choices. You've made it abundantly clear that you find my parenting and provisions inadequate compared to Frank's. So now you have 3 options. I outlined the choices from my letter apologize and work to rebuild trust, move in with Frank, or get her own apartment. This isn't fair, she said, tears now streaming down her face. You can't just throw me out. I'm not throwing you out. You're welcome to stay here under option 1. But things will be different. You'll need to contribute to household expenses, follow house rules, and work to repair the trust you've broken. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling Dad. He'll fix this. I didn't try to stop her. This was part of the lesson she needed to learn. Frank answered immediately for his daughter, unlike his response time to my calls. I could hear his voice through the speaker. Hey, sweetheart, what's up? Dad, Mom's gone crazy, Mackenzie sobbed. She took my car and stole my college money. Can you come get me? I want to live with you and Diane. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Frank finally spoke, his tone was uncomfortable. Mackenzie, this is complicated. Your mother and I just spoke about this situation. So you'll help me, right? I can move in with you guys. You said your home was my home too. Another pause. Well, honey, the thing is, we don't really have space right now with the renovations, and Diane's mother is coming to stay for a few months. Mackenzie's expression crumpled as she realized what was happening. But what about my car and college? You said you'd help with college. I meant I'd help you apply, maybe make some calls, Frank hedged. But your mother was handling the actual funding. Look, I'm sure she's just trying to make a point. If you apologize, I bet she'll reconsider. Dad, please. Mackenzie's voice broke. I need help. I can't get involved in this, Mackenzie. This is between you and your mother. Maybe take down that video and things will blow over. After a few more minutes of increasingly desperate pleading from Mackenzie and uncomfortable deflection from Frank, the call ended. She sat staring at her phone in disbelief. He won't help, she whispered. I felt a complex mixture of emotions, vindication that Frank had shown his true colors, sadness that Mackenzie had to experience this painful lesson, and a quiet anger at how easily Frank had encouraged the wedge between us, only to step back when actual responsibility was required. I'm sorry you're hurt, I said genuinely. But this is an important lesson about who's really there for you. She turned on me, then anger replacing shock. This is all your fault. You turned him against me. I did nothing of the sort. I simply informed him that I was stepping back from financial responsibility and that he might need to step up. His response was his choice entirely. She stormed to her room, slamming the door behind her. I let her go, knowing she needed time to process. Through the wall, I could hear her crying, and the muffled sound of more phone calls, presumably to Diane or friends all seeking rescue that wouldn't come. Later that evening, after hours of silence, Mackenzie emerged from her room, eyes red and puffy. She sat across from me at the kitchen table. Why did you really do this? She asked quietly. Because I love you enough to let you experience the truth, even when it's painful, I answered. You needed to see that social media approval and material things aren't the same as genuine support and love. It was just a stupid video, she mumbled. Everyone exaggerates for views. It may have started that way, but it revealed something real about how you've come to see me versus Frank. And it hurt Mackenzie. It hurt deeply to see 17 years of sacrifice reduced to a 110 rating for public entertainment. She was quiet for a long moment. Did you really save $87,000 for me? Yes, since you were 7 years old. Every bonus, every tax refund, every raise went into that account before I spent a penny on myself. More silence. Did Dad really refuse to help me? He revealed his priorities, I said carefully, just as you revealed yours in that video. She looked down at her hands. The video was actually his idea, she admitted in a small voice. He said rating videos get lots of views and that I should compare my two households for content. The revelation didn't surprise me, but it still stung to have confirmation of Frank's manipulation. And Diane was the one who suggested the 10-10 versus 110 ratings, Mackenzie continued. She said contrast drives engagement. I nodded, letting her speak. I didn't think you'd ever see it, she added. I blocked you on TikTok. That doesn't make it better, Mackenzie. In some ways it makes it worse. Tears welled in her eyes again. I know. I'm sorry. I really am. I believe you're sorry you got caught and sorry about the consequences. But are you sorry for the actual hurt you caused? For the ingratitude and disrespect? She didn't answer immediately, which I appreciated. It meant she was actually thinking rather than just saying what I wanted to hear. I think I've been awful, she finally said. Not just with the video. For a long time now. I just got caught up in all the stuff Dad and Diane have all the things they do. It made our life seem, I don't know, less somehow. Material things aren't the measure of a life well lived, Mackenzie, and they're certainly not the measure of parental love. Dad hasn't answered any of my texts since our call, she said, changing the subject slightly. And Diane blocked me when I kept messaging her. I wasn't surprised, but kept my expression neutral. What do you want to do now? She took a deep breath. I want to stay here, with you. I'll take down the video and apologize publicly. And I'll get a job to help with expenses. That's a start, I acknowledged. But rebuilding trust takes time, and actions speak louder than words. We talked well into the night, more honestly than we had in years. Mackenzie admitted that Frank had been subtly turning her against me, making small comments about my choices and lifestyle that planted seeds of discontent. Diane had encouraged comparison, always highlighting what they could provide that I couldn't. They made me feel special at first, Mackenzie explained. But it was always conditional. If I didn't like something or complained they'd get distant, everything had to be perfect for their social media. By morning, we had reached an understanding. Mackenzie would stay, take down the video, get a part-time job, and we would attend family therapy together. The car and college fund would remain gone for now, consequences of broken trust that would take time to rebuild. As dawn broke, Mackenzie asked quietly, "Do you think we'll be okay, Mom?" For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. I think we will be. Not immediately, but eventually. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, lingering resentments, and habits to break. But that morning, I saw a glimpse of the daughter I had raised returning from behind the entitled facade that Frank's influence had created. And that was worth more than any car or college fund. 6 months passed before I felt confident that the changes in Mackenzie were genuine and lasting. During that time, we both worked hard to rebuild what had been broken between us. True to her word, Mackenzie found a part-time job at a local coffee shop. Her first paycheck was modest, but the pride on her face when she contributed to the household expenses was worth more than any amount of money. She was learning the value of earned income in a way my lectures never could have taught her. We started attending therapy together twice a month. Our therapist, Dr. Rivera, helped us understand the manipulation tactics Frank had employed. Classic narcissistic triangulation, she explained. He positioned himself as the good parent, undermined your relationship, and then withdrew when actual responsibility was required. For Mackenzie, these sessions were often painful as she confronted the ways she had been used as a pawn in Frank's ego game. I feel so stupid, she confessed during one particularly emotional session. He never wanted to be my dad. He just wanted to look like the perfect father on Instagram. You weren't stupid, Dr. Rivera corrected gently. You were a child longing for a father's approval. He exploited that natural desire. We learned that Diane had been coaching Mackenzie on creating aspirational content for months, suggesting scenarios and comparisons specifically designed to make their household seem superior. The TikTok rating video had been the culmination of this grooming process. Frank made several attempts to reconnect with Mackenzie after a few months once he realized she wasn't coming back to his narrative. She showed me the text messages. Missed you this weekend. Diane made your favorite lasagna. There's a concert next month. Front row tickets if you're interested. Your room is still here whenever you want it. Not once did he acknowledge his part in the damage done or offer any meaningful support. It was always about appearances and entertainment, never substance. Mackenzie responded with simple boundaries. I'm focusing on school and work right now. Not available for visits. After our third therapy session, I made a significant decision. While the college fund remained liquidated, as a consequence, I set aside a portion of it to enroll Mackenzie in community college courses. She had expressed interest in digital marketing, ironically inspired by seeing the manipulative tactics used against her and wanting to understand them better. I want to learn how to use social media ethically, she explained, not to exploit people or make them feel bad about themselves. Her insight impressed me. Perhaps some good could come from this painful experience after all. The transformation in Mackenzie's values became evident in small ways. She deleted most of her social media accounts, keeping only a private Instagram where she connected with close friends. She donated the designer clothes Frank and Diane had bought her to a women's shelter. She started reading books about authentic living and minimalism. One Sunday afternoon, about 4 months after the TikTok incident, Mackenzie approached me with her laptop. "I want to make a new video," she said. "A public apology. But I wanted you to see it first and make sure you're okay with it." The video was simple and unscripted. Mackenzie spoke directly to the camera from our living room. "6 months ago, I posted a video rating my parents that went viral for all the wrong reasons. I was shallow, materialistic, and cruel, especially to my mom, who raised me alone for most of my life. I've learned a lot since then about what really matters, and it isn't fancy houses or designer clothes. It's the people who show up for you consistently, who love you, even when you're unlovable. Mom, I'm sorry. To everyone who saw that video and thought it was okay to judge parents based on what they provide materially, please learn from my mistake. The parent who shows up every day deserves a 2010, not a 110. I had tears in my eyes when the video ended. "Are you sure you want to post this? You don't have to." "I need to," she said firmly. "Not just for you, but for me. And maybe it will help someone else think twice before they do something similar." The apology video went viral even more so than the original rating video. The comments section filled with supportive messages and stories from other young people who had learned similar hard lessons about valuing the wrong things. But the most surprising development came when Frank reached out again after the video gained traction. "Just saw your new video. Very mature of you. We should catch up soon. Maybe do a father-daughter Q&A for your followers." Mackenzie showed me the message and laughed a sound I had missed hearing. "He still doesn't get it, does he? It's always about the show, never about what's real." That weekend, we used some of our joint savings, both contributing equally for a mother-daughter trip to a nearby lake. Nothing fancy, just a simple cabin rental for 2 nights. We hiked, played board games when it rained, and talked about the future. "I've been saving for a car," Mackenzie told me as we sat on the cabin's small porch watching the sunset. "Nothing fancy, just something reliable to get to work and school." "That's wonderful," I said. "Having a goal to work toward is important." "I don't blame you anymore, you know," she said after a moment of silence. "For taking the car and the college fund, it was the wake-up call I needed." "I never wanted to hurt you," I admitted. "It was the hardest decision I've ever made." "I know, but you loved me enough to let me face consequences. Dad never did that. He just wanted me to look good in his family pictures." The rebuilding of Mackenzie's college fund became our Sunday tradition. We would sit at the kitchen table, go over our budgets, and each contribute what we could to a new account, this one, with both our names on it. Sometimes, it was only $20, but the act of saving together held meaning beyond the dollar amount. In therapy, Mackenzie processed her complicated feelings about Frank. "The hardest part is accepting that he doesn't really love me, not in the way a father should," she said during one session. "He loves how I make him look to others. That's it." "That's his loss," Dr. Rivera said, "and it says nothing about your worth." As we approached the 6-month mark since the TikTok incident, Mackenzie came home one day with a small blue envelope. Inside was a key attached to a handmade keychain. "What's this?" I asked. "It's the key to my new car," she said proudly. "Well, new to me. It's a 2015 Honda Civic with 112,000 miles. But I bought it myself with my own money. Title's in my name." I hugged her tightly, more proud of this modest achievement than I would have been of any luxury vehicle Frank might have purchased for her. "Want to go for a drive?" she asked. As we drove around town in her sensibly purchased used car, I reflected on our journey. The pain of that TikTok video had led to genuine growth for both of us. Mackenzie had learned about values, consequences, and authentic relationships. I had learned about setting boundaries and allowing natural consequences to teach lessons my words never could. Frank continued to curate his perfect social media family, but without Mackenzie as a prop. She maintained minimal polite contact, but established firm boundaries that he was constantly trying to breach, always with an angle that would benefit his image. Diane eventually unfollowed Mackenzie on all platforms after the apology video gained traction. The narrative of the perfect blended family didn't work when one part of the blend spoke the uncomfortable truth. "Do you regret reconnecting with your dad?" I asked Mackenzie as we drove home. She thought for a moment. "No, actually. If I hadn't, I might have spent my whole life wondering about him, idealizing him. Now I know exactly who he is, and I know what real parenting looks like." That night, as I went to bed, I found a note Mackenzie had slipped under my door. "Mom, if I could make another rating video today, you'd get an Infinity 10. Not because of things you've bought me, but because you loved me enough to let me fail and learn. Thank you for being the parent I needed, not just the one I thought I wanted. Love, Mackenzie." I slept better that night than I had in months, maybe years. We still had challenges ahead. Trust takes longer to rebuild than to break. Mackenzie's relationship with money and material things was still evolving. I was still learning how to parent a young adult rather than a child. But we were on the right path, walking it together with a new understanding and appreciation for what truly matters. Not the size of our home or the brand of our clothes, but the authenticity of our connection and the constancy of our support for each other. In the end, the painful lesson of that TikTok video gave us both something priceless: perspective growth and a relationship built on something far stronger than material provisions or social media validation. Have you ever had to teach someone a difficult lesson about gratitude or values? Or perhaps you've been on the receiving end of such a lesson. Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give it a thumbs up. Your support means everything as I continue sharing these life lessons. Remember, sometimes the most painful moments lead to the greatest growth. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength and wisdom in your own challenging relationships.